A 13-year-old black boy stood alone in court, accused of a crime he didn't commit. When the strict judge heard his prayer, everyone in the courtroom couldn't hold back their tears. Michael's hands shook as he counted out his grandmother's pills in the dim kitchen light. 7 different medications, morning and night. The old plastic container rattled as he sorted them into daily compartments. "Grandma, it's time for your evening medicine," he called out, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. The clock on the microwave blinked 8:47 p.m. His homework lay unfinished on the kitchen table, math problems half-solved beneath a stack of hospital bills. "Coming, baby?" His grandmother's wheezing preceded her as she shuffled into the kitchen, holding onto the wall for support. Her blue nightgown hung loose on her thin frame. "You doing your schoolwork?" "Almost done," Michael lied, pushing the bills under his textbook. He pulled out a chair for her, the metal legs scraping against the linoleum floor. "Here's your heart medicine and the water pill." His grandmother's hand trembled as she reached for the pills. Michael watched her swallow each one, making sure she didn't miss any. The kitchen smelled of the soup he'd warmed up earlier, mixed with the sharp scent of her arthritis cream. The phone rang, making them both jump. Michael's stomach clenched. Late calls usually meant bad news about his mom. Chicago Memorial Hospital, the caller ID displayed. Michael grabbed the phone. "Hello? Is this the family of Sarah Johnson?" A tired voice asked. "Yes, this is her son, Michael. The doctor asked me to inform you that your mother's white blood cell count has dropped again. We've started her on a stronger antibiotic, but she'll need to stay in isolation for at least another week." Michael's throat tightened. "Can I still visit tomorrow after school?" "I'm sorry, but with her immune system this low, no visitors for now. Even with masks and gloves, it's too risky." He gripped the phone harder. "But tomorrow's her birthday. I understand, but these precautions are necessary. The nurses will make sure she gets any cards or messages you want to send." After hanging up, Michael stared at his math homework. The numbers blurred as tears threatened to fall, but he blinked them back. His grandmother didn't need to see him cry. "Was that about your mama?" she asked, her breathing labored. "Yeah, she's getting stronger medicine." Another lie to protect her. "They said she needs extra rest." His grandmother nodded slowly, her eyes worried. "Lord, watch over my baby girl," she whispered. Michael gathered her empty water glass and medicine containers, keeping his hands busy. The events from earlier that day crashed back into his mind. The police, the handcuffs, the store owner's angry face. He'd only been trying to help that old man with his groceries. The plastic bag had split open, cans rolling everywhere. While Michael was picking them up, someone else had thrown the rock through the store window. But the owner had seen only one young black boy near his store, and that was enough. The public defender they'd assigned him looked tired before Michael even started explaining. "These cases are pretty straightforward," she'd said, barely glancing at him. "If you plead guilty, we can probably get community service." "But I didn't do anything wrong," Michael had insisted, his voice cracking. She'd sighed, shuffling papers on her desk. "Look, with your background." "What background? I've never been in trouble before." "The judge will want to see responsibility taken. A guilty plea shows maturity." Now, standing in his grandmother's kitchen, Michael pulled out the white shirt he'd need for court tomorrow. It was old but clean. He'd ironed it twice already. "Time for your breathing treatment, Grandma," he said, setting up the nebulizer. The machine hummed to life, filling the kitchen with its familiar mechanical whirring. His grandmother patted his hand. "You're a good boy, Michael. The Lord knows your heart." Later that night, after making sure his grandmother was settled in bed, Michael sat on the edge of his twin mattress. The springs creaked under his weight. He pulled out an old photo album from under his bed, the cover worn smooth from handling. The pictures showed happier times. His mother healthy and laughing, his grandmother standing straight and tall. Birthday parties, school plays, Sunday dinners. Before the cancer came, before his grandmother's heart started failing, before today, when everything got even worse. Michael's fingers traced the image of his mother at his last birthday, her smile bright despite the headscarf covering her hair loss. 9 months ago. It felt like years. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the judge's courtroom waiting for him tomorrow. His white shirt hung on the closet door, a pale ghost in the darkness. The next morning felt like it was racing toward him. carrying more weight than his 13-year-old shoulders were meant to bear. But he had to be strong. His mother needed him to be strong. His grandmother needed him to be strong. There was no one else. The night stretched on, marked by his grandmother's muffled coughing from the next room and the distant wail of sirens on Chicago's south side. Michael lay awake, his prayers a whispered loop in the darkness. Please, God, help me prove I'm innocent. Please don't let them take me away from my family. Please help Mom get better. Please give Grandma strength. Please. The tears he'd held back all day finally came, soaking silently into his pillow. But tomorrow, he knew, there could be no tears in the courtroom. Tomorrow, he had to be more than a scared 13-year-old boy. Tomorrow, he had to be a man. Through his thin bedroom walls, he could hear his grandmother's breathing machine running again. The sound anchored him, reminded him why he couldn't give up. Outside his window, Chicago's lights glimmered like distant hopes in the night sky as another hour ticked closer to morning. Morning came too soon. Michael's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., though he'd barely slept. His grandmother's cough echoed from her bedroom as he pushed himself up from the mattress. Grandma, he called out, his bare feet hitting the cold floor. You okay? Just the usual, baby, she wheezed. Don't forget your white shirt. Michael found her sitting on the edge of her bed, one hand pressed against her chest. Her breathing came in short gasps. Let me get your inhaler, he said, reaching for her bedside drawer. His hands moved automatically through the morning routine. Inhaler, pills, breathing treatment. The court date. She started. It's okay, Grandma. I got it all planned out. Michael helped her with the inhaler. We'll take the 7:15 bus. That'll get us to the courthouse by 8:30. She gripped his arm. You eat something before we go? Yes, ma'am. In the bathroom, Michael stared at his reflection. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, making him look older than 13. He straightened his shoulders, practiced looking confident. The mirror showed a scared kid trying to act tough. The white shirt felt stiff and formal as he buttoned it up. His hands shook slightly, making the buttons difficult. From the kitchen, he could smell the instant oatmeal he'd started for his grandmother. Michael, she called. You're burning it. He rushed to the stove, stirring the thickening oatmeal. Sorry, Grandma. Got distracted. Can't go to court on an empty stomach. She watched him from the kitchen doorway, already dressed in her Sunday best. The blue dress hung loose on her frame, but her gray hair was neatly combed. Michael spooned oatmeal into 2 bowls, adding a sprinkle of sugar to his grandmother's portion. His own stomach felt too tight to eat, but he forced down a few bites. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. Michael walked slowly, matching his grandmother's pace. She had to stop twice to catch her breath. Maybe we should call a cab, he suggested. Save your money, she said firmly. The bus is fine. They weren't alone at the stop. A woman in scrubs checked her watch repeatedly. 2 men in construction gear talked quietly. A mother held her crying baby, bouncing it gently. The bus arrived 5 minutes late. Michael helped his grandmother up the steep steps, ignoring the impatient sighs behind them. They found seats near the front, the worn fabric scratchy through his dress pants. You remember what your lawyer said? His grandmother asked softly. Yes, ma'am. Answer all questions respectfully. Tell the truth. She squeezed his hand. The truth is all we got, baby. Michael watched the city wake up through the streaked bus window. Early morning workers hurried along the sidewalks. A garbage truck blocked traffic. Police cars clustered around a convenience store. The courthouse loomed ahead, all gray stone and tall columns. Michael's chest tightened at the sight. His grandmother's hand felt cold in his. ID and purpose of visit, the security guard demanded as they entered. His eyes barely flickered over Michael's court summons. Empty your pockets. Belt off. Shoes off. Michael helped his grandmother remove her shoes, steadying her as she wobbled. The metal detector beeped when she went through. Arms out, a female guard ordered, running a wand over his grandmother's body. It shrieked near her chest. My pacemaker, his grandmother explained. Through again, the guard said, bored. Michael's own security check felt like an eternity. The cold floor chilled his sock-clad feet. Other people moved through quickly, collecting their belongings, while the guards took extra time checking his empty pockets, his belt, his shoes. Clear, they finally announced. The elevator was crowded. Michael stood close to his grandmother, protecting her from the press of bodies. A man in an expensive suit checked his phone, his elbow jabbing Michael's ribs. No one offered his grandmother a seat. Juvenile court occupied the fourth floor. The hallway stretched long and institutional, lined with hard plastic chairs. A few other kids sat waiting with their families. One boy cried quietly while his mother whispered to him. Courtroom 3, Michael's summons read. The heavy wooden door creaked as they entered. Judge Thompson's reputation preceded her. Michael had heard the whispers, strict, harsh, no patience for excuses. She sat high on her bench, glasses perched on her nose, reviewing papers without looking up. All rise, the bailiff called as another case began. Michael watched a 16-year-old plead guilty to shoplifting. Judge Thompson's voice cut through the air like steel. 6 months probation. Community service. Next case. His public defender arrived, clutching a coffee cup. Michael Johnson? Quick review before we start. Remember, short answers. No explanations unless asked. But what about? Michael began. Just follow my lead? She shuffled through her papers, frowning. Where's the incident report? His grandmother's breathing grew more labored as they waited. Michael counted the minutes on the big clock above the judge's head. Each tick felt like a hammer blow. Other cases moved quickly. A drug possession, a vandalism charge, a truancy violation. Judge Thompson handled each with mechanical efficiency, her face betraying no emotion. Docket number 47329, the clerk announced. State versus Michael Johnson. Michael's legs felt like lead as he stood. His grandmother squeezed his hand one last time before he walked forward. Step up to the podium, the bailiff instructed. The courtroom stretched endless before him. Judge Thompson looked down from her bench, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. The prosecutor shuffled papers. His public defender stifled a yawn. Michael gripped the podium, his white shirt suddenly too tight around his neck. Behind him, his grandmother's wheezing seemed to fill the silent courtroom. Michael Johnson, Judge Thompson read from her papers. 13 years old. Charged with criminal vandalism and destruction of property. She looked up, studying him over her glasses. The weight of her gaze pressed down like a physical thing. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor. Michael's voice came out smaller than he intended. Behind him, his grandmother's wheezing grew louder. Judge Thompson's pen scratched against paper. Mr. Chun, you may present the state's case. The prosecutor stood, straightening his tie. Your Honor, the state calls Mr. Robert Klein, owner of Klein's Corner Market. Michael's stomach clenched as the store owner approached the witness stand. Mr. Klein's face looked just as angry as it had that day. His jaw set tight as he took the oath. Mr. Klein, please tell the court what happened on the afternoon of April 15th, the prosecutor said. I was working the register when I heard glass breaking. Mr. Klein's voice carried clear across the courtroom. I ran outside and saw this boy running away from my broken window. $300 worth of damage. Did you clearly see the defendant? Of course I did. They all look, Mr. Klein caught himself. I'm certain it was him. Black kid, tall for his age, wearing a blue jacket. Michael's hands gripped the table. He had been wearing a blue jacket that day, helping the old man with his groceries. But he hadn't broken anything. Your Honor, Mr. Klein continued, his voice harder now. This kind of vandalism is destroying our neighborhood. These kids think they can get away with anything. Someone needs to teach them a lesson. Michael's public defender scribbled something on her legal pad without looking up. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Did anyone else witness the incident? Judge Thompson asked. No, Your Honor, but I know what I saw. The memory of that afternoon played vivid in Michael's mind. The old man struggling with his grocery bags, the plastic splitting open, cans of soup rolling across the sidewalk. Michael had been picking them up when he heard the crash of breaking glass. Then shouting, running footsteps, police sirens. I would never. Michael started to say. The defendant will remain silent, Judge Thompson warned. The prosecutor called his next witness, Officer Brady, one of the cops who'd arrested Michael. The suspect was apprehended approximately 1 block from the scene, Officer Brady testified. He matched the description provided by Mr. Klein. And his behavior upon arrest? initially resistant, kept saying he was helping someone with groceries. Officer Brady's tone made it clear how little he believed that story. Michael's public defender finally looked up from her notes. Officer Brady, did you find any other evidence linking my client to the vandalism? Glass fragments? Surveillance footage? No physical evidence was necessary, given the eyewitness identification. From the back of the courtroom came the sound of his grandmother's breathing treatment. She must have brought her portable nebulizer. The familiar mechanical whirring mixed with the air conditioning's drone. The state calls Ms. Patricia Reynolds, the prosecutor announced. Michael's chest tightened. The social worker walked to the witness stand, her heels clicking against the floor. She carried a thick folder. Ms. Reynolds, you conducted a home evaluation of the defendant's living situation? Yes, Your Honor. She adjusted her glasses. I found conditions that raised significant concerns. The folder opened. Papers rustled. The defendant lives with his grandmother, who suffers from severe health issues requiring constant care. His mother is currently hospitalized with stage 4 cancer. There is no father in the picture. Judge Thompson leaned forward. And your assessment of the home environment? The grandmother appears unable to provide adequate supervision. Medical bills have created financial strain. The defendant has missed multiple school days to care for family members. Michael felt tears threatening. He blinked hard, focusing on his white shirt's buttons. Given these circumstances, Ms. Reynolds continued, I recommend temporary placement in a juvenile facility or foster care where the defendant can receive proper structure and guidance. A small sound escaped his grandmother. Michael didn't dare turn around. His public defender stood. Your Honor, my client's attendance record shows he maintains AB average despite his responsibilities at home. His teachers report no behavioral issues. Where are these teacher statements? Judge Thompson asked. The public defender shuffled papers. We had expected his homeroom teacher to testify today, but this teacher is not present. There was a scheduling conflict. Judge Thompson's pen scratched again. The sound felt like it was carving into Michael's skin. Your Honor, the prosecutor said, given the evidence presented and the unstable home situation, the state recommends 6 months in juvenile detention followed by 2 years probation. The words hit Michael like physical blows. 6 months away from his family. Who would help his grandmother with her medicine? Who would visit his mother in the hospital? Does the defense have any additional witnesses? Judge Thompson asked. The public defender stood. Your Honor, my client would like to make a statement. Michael's mouth went dry. They had practiced this, but the words felt stuck in his throat. I was just trying to help. He started. The prosecutor cut in. Objection, Your Honor. The defendant had his chance to accept responsibility by pleading guilty. Sustained. Judge Thompson checked her watch. Given the hour, we'll continue this case tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Court is adjourned. The bang of her gavel made Michael jump. All rise. As people began filing out, Michael finally turned to his grandmother. Her face had a gray tinge he didn't like. The nebulizer mask fogged with each labored breath. Grandma? He hurried to her side. You need your pills? She gripped his arm. I'm fine, baby. Just need to rest a minute. The public defender was already heading for the door, case files tucked under her arm. The prosecutor spoke quietly with Mr. Klein near the bench. Officer Brady watched Michael with suspicious eyes. And Judge Thompson. She sat at her bench, studying Michael over her glasses as he helped his grandmother gather her things. Her expression gave away nothing. Michael, his grandmother wheezed. Whatever happens, you tell the truth. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. He supported her as she stood shakily. We'll come back tomorrow and tell the truth. But as they made their slow way out of the courtroom, Michael wondered if the truth would be enough. The system seemed determined to see him as guilty before he even opened his mouth. Tomorrow loomed ahead like a storm on the horizon. One more chance to prove his innocence. One more chance to keep his family together. The courthouse halls echoed with their footsteps as they left. His grandmother's breathing. The weight of tomorrow pressing down. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a desperate prayer beginning to form. The next morning's sunrise painted the Chicago courthouse in shades of gray. Michael and his grandmother arrived early, her breathing even worse than yesterday. The same security guards, the same metal detector beeping at her pacemaker, the same cold floor under Michael's sock feet. Courtroom 3 felt smaller today. Closer. Tighter. All rise. Judge Thompson swept in, her black robe flowing behind her. Her glasses caught the fluorescent light as she settled into her chair. Case number 47329, State versus Michael Johnson, continues, the clerk announced. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the state has new information regarding surveillance evidence. Michael's heart jumped. The security cameras would prove he was helping that old man, not breaking windows. Mr. Chun, proceed, Judge Thompson said. We subpoenaed the store's security footage from April 15th. The prosecutor shuffled papers. Unfortunately, due to a technical malfunction, no footage exists from that day. Michael's hope crashed. His grandmother's hand found his shoulder, squeezing gently. The security system failed? Judge Thompson asked. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Torres, the store's clerk, can testify to this. A thin man in a wrinkled shirt approached the witness stand. Michael recognized him. He usually worked the evening shift at Klein's Market. Mr. Torres, the prosecutor began, please explain the camera situation. The system had been acting up all week. Torres wouldn't meet Michael's eyes. Sometimes it recorded, sometimes not. That day, nothing. And you reported this malfunction? To Mr. Klein, yes. He said he'd get it fixed when he had the money. The public defender stood. Mr. Torres, did you witness the vandalism yourself? No, I was in the stockroom. Did you see my client at all that day? Torres shifted in his seat. I'm not sure. There was a kid helping old Mr. Washington with his groceries. Might have been him. Everything happened so fast. Michael sat straighter. Finally, someone remembered Mr. Washington. Old Mr. Washington? Judge Thompson asked. Can this person testify? The prosecutor cleared his throat. We were unable to locate Mr. Washington, Your Honor. He's not a regular customer. Another dead end. Michael's fingers twisted in his lap. Your Honor, his public defender said, given the lack of concrete evidence and conflicting testimonies, I'm moved to dismiss all charges. Objection. The prosecutor's voice sharp. We have a clear eyewitness identification from Mr. Klein, an identification made in a moment of stress and anger, the public defender countered. With no supporting evidence. Judge Thompson's pen scratched across paper. Motion denied. Mr. Chun, call your next witness. The state recalls Officer Brady. The police officer took the stand again, his uniform crisp, his expression stern. Officer Brady, what was the defendant's demeanor during arrest? Agitated. Kept insisting he was innocent. Brady's tone suggested this was typical criminal behavior. Claimed he was helping some old man, but we found no witness to support this. Did you search the area for evidence? We recovered fragments of the broken window. No fingerprints possible on glass that shattered. Michael's public defender barely looked up from her notes. Her questions felt mechanical, rehearsed. Officer Brady, did you interview any other potential witnesses? Area canvas produced no additional leads. Did you check nearby businesses for their security footage? Standard procedure was followed. Each answer drove another nail into Michael's case. His white shirt felt too tight again, choking him. Judge Thompson peered over her glasses. Officer Brady, in your professional opinion, how common are false identifications in cases like this? Very rare, Your Honor. Mr. Klein got a good look at the perpetrator. From the gallery came his grandmother's wheezing cough. Michael wanted to turn around, to check on her, but he forced himself to stay still. The state rests, Your Honor, the prosecutor announced. Judge Thompson turned to Michael's public defender. Your witnesses? She stood slowly. Defense calls Michael Johnson. The walk to the witness stand felt endless. The oath blurred in Michael's ears as he raised his right hand. Michael, his public defender began, tell us about April 15th. He took a deep breath. I was walking home from the hospital. My mom. His voice cracked. My mom had just started a new round of chemo. Focus on the incident, his lawyer prompted. Yes, ma'am. I saw this old man, Mr. Washington, trying to carry too many grocery bags. When one split open, I stopped to help him pick up his cans. And the window, I heard it break, turned around, and saw someone running away. Then Mr. Klein came out yelling, and the police showed up. The prosecutor stood. If someone else broke the window, Why didn't you tell Mr. Klein? I tried, but he wouldn't listen. He just kept pointing at me, saying I did it. Convenient that no one can find this Mr. Washington to verify your story. Objection. Michael's lawyer called. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Thompson said. Mr. Chun, proceed with proper questioning. The prosecutor approached the witness stand. You claim you were helping an elderly man. Yet you have no proof. No witnesses. No video evidence. Just your word. Michael gripped the edge of the witness box. I'm telling the truth. Like you told the truth about your mother's condition to your grandmother? Michael froze. How do they know about that? Objection. His public defender again. Relevance? Goes to character, Your Honor, the prosecutor said. The defendant has a history of deception, even with family members. Judge Thompson leaned forward. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Johnson. Michael's eyes burned. I didn't want to worry her more. Mom's really sick and Grandma's heart. So you admit to lying when it suits you? No. I mean, I was trying to protect her, like you're trying to protect yourself now. With this convenient story about helping a mysterious old man who nobody can find. The tears came then, hot and unwanted. Michael wiped them away quickly, but he saw Judge Thompson noticing. Your Honor, his public defender stood. The defense requests a brief recess. Judge Thompson studied Michael for a long moment. Granted. 15 minutes. The bailiff led Michael back to his seat. His grandmother reached for him, but a coughing fit doubled her over. Grandma? He grabbed her nebulizer from her bag. Here, you need this? As he helped her with the breathing mask, he felt the weight of every eye in the courtroom. The prosecutor whispered with Mr. Klein. Officer Brady watched with barely hidden disdain. And Judge Thompson, she removed her glasses, rubbing her temples. 15 minutes. 15 minutes to pull himself together. 15 minutes to find a way to make them believe the truth. But as his grandmother's wheezing filled the quiet courtroom, Michael wondered if anyone was even listening anymore. The truth seemed to be drowning in a sea of assumptions and accusations, pulling him under with it. The 15-minute recess stretched like cold molasses. Michael sat with his grandmother in the courthouse hallway, holding her nebulizer while she struggled to breathe. The machine's hum echoed off the marble walls. I'm okay, baby, she wheezed between treatments. Just the stress. A door opened down the hall. Ms. Reynolds, the social worker, walked toward them, heels clicking against the floor. Her face wore that professional mask of concern that Michael had grown to dread. Mrs. Johnson, she said, I need to discuss something with you and Michael. His grandmother lowered the nebulizer. Can it wait? We're due back in court. This concerns the court proceedings. Ms. Reynolds knelt to their level, her voice dropping. Given your current health issues and the situation with Michael's mother, we're considering emergency temporary placement. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. What? It would only be until your grandmother's condition stabilizes, Ms. Reynolds explained. A few months at most. No. Michael's voice came out sharp. I'm not leaving them. Michael, think about, I said no. He stood up, hands shaking. Grandma needs me. Mom needs me. His grandmother reached for his arm. Michael, baby, calm down. The state has concerns, Ms. Reynolds pressed. Your grandmother's breathing issues are getting worse. Your mother's cancer treatments aren't working as hoped. You're 13 years old, carrying adult responsibilities. So you want to punish me for helping my family? We want to help you be a child again. The hallway seemed to spin. Michael backed away from Ms. Reynolds, bumping into the wall. His white shirt felt damp with sweat. All rise. The bailiff's voice cut through the tension. Court was resuming. Inside courtroom 3, Michael could barely focus as the prosecutor called his next witness, his school counselor, Mr. Peterson. Michael's attendance has become irregular, Mr. Peterson testified. His grades are slipping. When he does come to class, he often falls asleep. And his behavior, the prosecutor asked. Withdrawn. Distracted. Not the student he used to be. Michael's public defender barely attempted cross-examination. She seemed more interested in checking her phone under the table. Judge Thompson's voice cut through the haze. Mr. Peterson, in your professional opinion, what does Michael need most right now? The counselor adjusted his tie. Structure. Stability. A chance to focus on his education without adult burdens. Behind Michael, his grandmother's breathing grew more labored. The sound filled his ears, drowning out the rest of Mr. Peterson's testimony. Your Honor, Ms. Reynolds stood up. Given this additional testimony, Child Services moves to implement emergency placement immediately. No! The word burst from Michael before he could stop it. Order, Judge Thompson warned, but Michael couldn't hold back anymore. Please, he begged. You can't take me away from them. My mom's birthday was yesterday. I couldn't even visit her because her immune system's too weak. Grandma needs help with her medicine. There's nobody else. Mr. Johnson, control yourself, or his grandmother's coughing interrupted the judge. Not her usual wheezing, but deep, racking coughs that shook her whole body. Grandma? Michael turned, forgetting court protocol. She was bent double in her seat, face gray, lips taking on a bluish tinge. Call an ambulance. Someone shouted. Michael reached her in 3 steps, grabbed her emergency inhaler from her purse. Here, Grandma. Small breaths, remember? The courtroom erupted in movement. The bailiff called 911. Ms. Reynolds rushed forward. Judge Thompson stood at her bench. I need my... His grandmother gestured weakly at her pocket. Heart pills. Michael's hands shook as he searched her cardigan pocket. The pill bottle slipped from his fingers, small white tablets scattering across the floor. No, no, no. He dropped to his knees, scrambling to gather them. Step aside, a firm voice ordered. Judge Thompson had left her bench. She knelt beside his grandmother, checking her pulse. How long has she had heart problems? 3 years, Michael answered, still collecting pills. Since her first attack. The ambulance is 2 minutes out, the bailiff reported. Michael's grandmother caught his hand. Baby, I'm sorry. Don't talk, Grandma. Help's coming. Her grip was so weak. Too weak. Tears blurred Michael's vision as paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. BP's dropping, one announced, attaching monitors. Possible cardiac event. They lifted her onto the stretcher. Her hands slipped from Michael's. I'm going with her, he insisted. Ms. Reynolds stepped forward. Michael, let the paramedics. She's my grandmother. His voice cracked. The tears came freely now. Please, she's all I have left here. Mom's in the hospital. I can't. The stretcher was moving. His grandmother's oxygen mask fogged with each shallow breath. Michael felt his legs give way. Strong hands caught him before he hit the floor. Judge Thompson. Bailiff, she ordered, escort Michael to the ambulance. Your Honor, the prosecutor protested. We haven't finished. Court is adjourned until tomorrow. Judge Thompson's tone brooked no argument. Mr. Johnson, go with your grandmother. The next minutes blurred, running alongside the stretcher, the ambulance siren wailing. His grandmother's hand cold in his as paramedics worked around them. Hang on, Grandma, he whispered. Please hang on. The hospital emerged through the ambulance windows. Not his mother's hospital, but closer. Emergency room doors flew open. Doctors shouted terms Michael didn't understand. Family needs to wait here, a nurse said firmly, stopping him as they wheeled his grandmother away. But we'll update you soon. Fill these out. She handed him a stack of forms. Michael stared at the papers, letters swimming before his eyes. Insurance information, medical history, adult things he shouldn't have to know. His legs finally gave out. He slid down the waiting room wall, forms scattering around him. His white shirt was wrinkled, tear-stained. Why? He whispered to the empty air. Why is this happening? No one answered. The emergency room bustled around him. Other dramas, other fears, other prayers. Michael pulled his knees to his chest, made himself small against the wall. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he stopped trying to be strong, stopped trying to be grown up, stopped trying to hold it all together. In a corner of the emergency room waiting area, a 13-year-old boy broke down and sobbed, his prayers turning to whispered pleas between gasping breaths. Please, God, don't take her too. Please. I'll do anything. Just don't take her too. 4 hours in the emergency room. Michael sat in the hard plastic chair, still wearing his court clothes, the white shirt wrinkled and damp. A doctor finally approached. Family of Gloria Johnson? Michael jumped up. That's my grandmother. Is she? Stabilized, the doctor said. The heart episode was serious, but we caught it in time. She's asking for you. The relief made his knees weak. Can I see her? Room 412. 5 minutes only. She needs rest. Michael found his grandmother looking small in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily around her. Her eyes opened as he approached. Baby. Her voice was weak. The court case. Don't worry about that. He took her hand. Just get better. You go back tomorrow. Tell them. She had to pause for breath. Tell them everything. Grandma, I can't leave you here. You have to. Her fingers tightened slightly on his. Trust in God, Michael. Tell your truth. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Time's up. I love you, Grandma. Love you too, baby. Remember what I said? Back in the hallway, Michael found Ms. Reynolds waiting. I contacted Judge Thompson, she said. Court resumes at 9 a.m. You need a place to stay tonight? Michael shook his head. I'm staying here. Hospital policy won't allow. Then I'll sleep in the waiting room. Ms. Reynolds sighed. Michael, this is exactly why we're concerned. You're 13, trying to handle adult situations. Who else is going to handle them? She had no answer for that. Morning came too soon. Michael splashed water on his face in the hospital bathroom, tried to smooth his wrinkled shirt. Dark circles shadowed his eyes in the mirror. The courthouse felt different as he climbed the steps alone. Colder, bigger. All rise. Judge Thompson studied him as he entered courtroom 3. Something had changed in her expression. Mr. Johnson, she said, given yesterday's events, we can postpone. No, Your Honor. Michael's voice was hoarse but steady. I need to tell my truth. She nodded slowly. Proceed. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, given the domestic situation, the state moves to expedite placement. Wait. Michael didn't mean to interrupt, but the words spilled out. Please, just let me pray first. The courtroom fell silent. Michael closed his eyes, clasped his hands. The prayer started as a whisper. Dear God, I don't know if I'm doing this right, but Grandma always says you listen. So please, listen now. His voice grew stronger. I'm not asking you to make everything okay. I know Mom's cancer might not get better. I know Grandma's heart is weak. I know I'm just a kid trying to hold everything together. Tears slid down his cheeks, but he kept going. I'm scared all the time. Scared Mom won't make it through another treatment. Scared Grandma's heart will give out. Scared they'll take me away when my family needs me most. Someone in the courtroom sniffled. Michael didn't open his eyes. But I'm telling the truth about that day. I was helping Mr. Washington with his groceries because that's what Mom and Grandma taught me. Help others. Do right. Tell truth. His voice cracked. I didn't break that window. I know Mr. Klein thinks he saw me do it. Maybe from where he was standing, it looked that way. But I swear on everything I believe in, I was just trying to help an old man pick up his groceries. The prayer poured out now, raw and real. I'm tired of being strong. Tired of pretending I'm okay. Tired of watching my family suffer. But I won't stop taking care of them. I won't stop trying, because that's what love means. Michael opened his eyes, tears flowing freely. So if you're listening, God, help them see the truth. Not just about the window, but about everything. Help them understand that sometimes a family is all you've got. And you have to hold on with everything you have. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Judge Thompson had removed her glasses. The prosecutor stared at his papers. Even the bailiff looked away, wiping his eyes. Your Honor, the prosecutor's voice was different now. Softer. The state would like to. The courtroom doors burst open. An elderly man shuffled in, supported by a court clerk. His weathered face looked anxiously around the room. I'm looking for the Johnson boy, he said. The one who helped me with my groceries. Michael's breath caught. Mr. Washington? The old man's eyes found him. Been sick in bed, or I'd have come sooner. Saw the story in the newspaper this morning. That boy there. He pointed a shaking finger at Michael. That boy helped me when my grocery bags broke. Was picking up my cans when all the commotion started. Judge Thompson leaned forward. Mr. Washington, you're willing to testify to this under oath? Already sworn and downstairs. Got my receipt from Klein's Market too. Shows I was there that day. And I'll tell you something else. I saw who really broke that window. Wasn't this boy. Was some older kids on bikes. They rode past, through something, and took off laughing. The prosecutor stood, papers rustling. Your Honor, in light of this new testimony. But Michael barely heard him. His prayer echoed in his head, mixed with his grandmother's words. Trust in God. Tell your truth. He hadn't known if anyone was listening. Hadn't known if truth would be enough. But here, in this moment, something had broken open. Not a window this time, but the hard shell of assumptions and prejudice that had surrounded him. The tears came again, but different now. Tears of relief, of validation, of a truth finally heard. And in the silence of the courtroom, as Judge Thompson prepared to speak, Michael sent up one more quiet prayer. Thank you. Judge Thompson set her glasses on the bench. The morning light through the courthouse windows cast long shadows across her face. Mr. Washington, she said, please approach the bench. The elderly man shuffled forward, leaning on his cane. His worn sweater and pressed slacks spoke of dignity preserved through hard times. Tell us exactly what you saw that day. Mr. Washington cleared his throat. I was getting my groceries. Social Security had just come in, so I was stocking up. Tried to carry too many bags at once. These old hands aren't what they used to be. He flexed his gnarled fingers. Bags split open right there on the sidewalk. Cans rolling everywhere. Then this young man. He pointed at Michael. He stopped to help. No hesitation. Just started picking things up, asking if I was okay. And the window? Judge Thompson pressed. 3 boys on bikes. Rode past fast. One threw something, looked like a rock. Glass broke. They were laughing as they rode away. Mr. Washington's voice hardened. I tried to tell the police, but everyone was too busy yelling at this boy, who was just helping me. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, given this testimony, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Michael Johnson. Judge Thompson raised her hand. Not yet, Mr. Chun. She turned to Mr. Klein, who sat rigid in his chair. Mr. Klein approached the bench. The store owner walked forward slowly, his face flushed. You were quite certain about what you saw, Judge Thompson said. Mr. Klein swallowed hard. From inside the store, when I heard the crash, I just saw a black kid near my broken window. I assumed. You assumed, Judge Thompson repeated. Her voice could have frozen water. And based on that assumption, a 13-year-old boy faced juvenile detention. A boy who was actually helping an elderly customer. Mr. Klein stared at his shoes. I was wrong. Look at him when you say that. Mr. Klein turned to Michael. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Michael nodded slightly, his throat tight. Judge Thompson wasn't finished. Mr. Klein, this court takes a very dim view of false accusations based on racial prejudice. You'll be paying a fine, and I strongly suggest you examine your biases before they land you in more serious trouble. Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Reynolds. Judge Thompson turned to the social worker. Your recommendation for emergency placement was based partly on concerns about Michael's home situation, correct? Yes, Your Honor. Come forward, please. Judge Thompson shuffled papers on her desk. I have here Michael's school records. Despite caring for 2 ill family members, he maintains AB average. His teachers describe him as responsible, compassionate, and mature beyond his years. Ms. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. The concerns were about his welfare. His welfare? Judge Thompson's voice sharpened. This young man has shown more strength, dignity, and moral character than many adults I see in this courtroom. He's not failing his family. The system is failing him. She turned to Michael. Mr. Johnson, when was the last time you visited your mother? 3 days ago, Your Honor. Before her immune system got too weak for visitors. Chicago Memorial Hospital? Yes, ma'am. Judge Thompson picked up her phone. Claire, give me Dr. Matthews at Memorial. Yes, I'll hold. She looked at Michael. Your mother's oncologist? Yes, Your Honor. How did you? I know Sarah Johnson's case. My son. Judge Thompson paused as someone came on the line. Dr. Matthews? Helen Thompson. We need to discuss Sarah Johnson's situation. Her son is in my courtroom. The room fell silent as Judge Thompson listened. She wrote something in her notes. I see. And if she had access to the new treatment protocol? Yes, I understand the cost concerns. What if funding wasn't an issue? Another pause. Thank you, doctor. I'll be in touch. She hung up and addressed the courtroom. 10 years ago, my son Daniel was diagnosed with the same aggressive cancer currently affecting Sarah Johnson. He had access to every treatment option available. He had me, a judge with resources and connections, fighting for him. He survived. Her voice softened. Michael has been fighting just as hard for his mother, but without those resources. That ends today. She turned to her clerk. Contact the Carter Foundation. Tell them Judge Thompson is calling in her favor. I want Sarah Johnson enrolled in their treatment assistance program immediately. Michael's hands started shaking. Your Honor. The foundation also provides transportation assistance and home health care. Judge Thompson looked at Ms. Reynolds. That should address some of your concerns about the family situation. Ms. Reynolds nodded quickly. Yes, Your Honor. Furthermore, Judge Thompson picked up her pen. Mr. Klein, your store is hiring? The store owner straightened. Yes, Your Honor. Need someone for afternoon shift. When Sarah Johnson completes her treatment, and she will complete it, you will offer her a position. Consider it part of making amends. Fair wages, full benefits. Yes, Your Honor. Michael couldn't breathe. Everything was happening so fast. Now, Judge Thompson's gaze swept the courtroom. Does anyone else have concerns about this young man's ability to support his family while maintaining his own welfare? Silence. Good. Mr. Chin? The prosecutor stood. The state withdraws all charges, Your Honor. Granted. Judge Thompson finally smiled. Michael, come here. He approached the bench on shaking legs. Your prayer. She paused, collecting herself. Your prayer reminded me of my son, of watching him fight, of how much difference it makes when someone fights with you. She pulled a business card from her desk. This is my direct line. If you or your family need anything at all, you call. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Michael's voice cracked. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank God. Her eyes twinkled. He apparently listens to you. The bailiff was wiping his eyes. The prosecutor stared at his papers. Even Ms. Reynolds managed a watery smile. One more thing. Judge Thompson's voice carried through the courtroom. Anyone here who witnessed this young man's courage, his devotion to family, his unshakable faith in truth, remember it. Remember what real character looks like. Remember what happens when we look past our assumptions and see people's hearts. She picked up her gavel. Case dismissed. The bang echoed through the courtroom like a starting gun, releasing Michael into a new race. Not running from something now, but running toward hope. Call your grandmother, Judge Thompson said softly. Tell her everything's okay now. Really okay? Michael clutched the business card, his vision blurring. And Michael? He looked up. That prayer. Judge Thompson's voice was gentle. Keep it in your heart. When things get hard, and they will still get hard sometimes, remember this moment. Remember that truth and love are stronger than fear and prejudice. Remember that you're not alone anymore. Michael nodded, unable to speak. Court is adjourned, Judge Thompson announced. But as people began filing out, she added quietly, and God is definitely listening. Michael's hands trembled as he dialed his grandmother's hospital room number. Each ring stretched his nerves tighter. Hello. Her voice sounded stronger today. Grandma? It's over. The judge dismissed everything. Thank the Lord. He heard the smile in her voice. Tell me everything, baby. Michael sank into a courthouse bench, phone pressed to his ear. Mr. Washington came. He told them what really happened. And Judge Thompson. His voice caught. She's helping Mom get new treatment. Better treatment. The hallway bustled around him as he explained everything. The Carter Foundation, the job offer, Judge Thompson's phone number. His grandmother's happy tears mixed with his own. You see, she said. God was listening. Yes, ma'am. The nurse coming? Time for medicine. You go on now. Come see me later. Love you, Grandma. Love you too, baby. So proud of you. As Michael hung up, he noticed Mr. Klein hovering nearby, hat in hands. Michael. The store owner's face was lined with shame. Can we talk? They found a quiet corner near the water fountain. Mr. Klein couldn't meet his eyes. I've been in business 30 years, he began. Seen lots of vandalism. Started seeing threats everywhere. Stopped seeing people. It's okay, Michael said quietly. You apologized. No, it's not okay. Mr. Klein's voice hardened. I could have ruined your life because I didn't take time to see truth. That's not okay. He pulled out his wallet, withdrew a business card. My store manager's retiring next month. Job's yours when you finish school, if you want it. Full college assistance program, too. Michael stared at the card. But that's years away. I'll wait. Mr. Klein finally met his gaze. Some debts take time to repay. Before Michael could respond, Ms. Reynolds approached with a thick folder. Michael, we need to update your family's file. The Carter Foundation called. They're sending a car to take you to Chicago Memorial. Your mother's new treatment protocol starts today. The corridor seemed to spin. Today, Judge Thompson's orders. Ms. Reynolds smiled. She doesn't believe in wasting time. Speaking of the judge, her clerk hurried over, carrying a garment bag. From Judge Thompson, he said, for your hospital visit. Inside was a new white shirt, crisp and clean. Michael's vision blurred again. All these people helping after so long, struggling alone. A commotion near the courtroom drew their attention. News reporters clustered around Judge Thompson as she left chambers. Your Honor, comment on the Johnson case? Is it true you're personally sponsoring the family? Judge Thompson raised her hand. The reporters fell silent. This case. She paused, choosing her words carefully. This case reminded us that justice isn't just about laws. It's about seeing people's hearts. About recognizing when the system needs to protect, not punish. About admitting our mistakes and making them right. She spotted Michael listening. That young man taught this court more about dignity, faith, and courage than any law book could. His story deserves to be told, not as a tale of injustice, but as a reminder that truth prevails when we open our hearts to hear it. The reporters scribbled frantically. Camera flashes popped. Now, Judge Thompson continued, I suggest you all go visit Klein's Market. I hear they're instituting new community outreach programs, starting with free grocery delivery to elderly customers. Isn't that right, Mr. Klein? The store owner straightened. Yes, Your Honor. Seems we need to do better by our neighbors. More questions flew, but Judge Thompson waved them off. She approached Michael. Cars waiting downstairs. Ready to see your mother? Michael clutched the new shirt. What if the treatment doesn't work? Then we'll fight harder. She squeezed his shoulder. Together this time, the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, but the bailiff cleared a path. A sleek black car idled at the curb. Your Honor? Michael turned back. Thank you. For everything. No. She smiled. Thank you for reminding me why I became a judge. Now go. Your mother's waiting. The car was cool and quiet inside. As they pulled away, Michael saw Mr. Klein talking with Mr. Washington, probably arranging that grocery delivery program. Ms. Reynolds conferring with Foundation representatives about home health care. Judge Thompson watching from the steps, her clerk already dialing more numbers. Ripples spreading out, changing lives. His phone buzzed, a text from his grandmother. Doctors say I can come home tomorrow. God is good. Michael changed into his new shirt as the car wound through Chicago's streets. The hospital loomed ahead, but it looked different now. Less frightening, less final. The driver opened his door. Mr. Johnson, they're expecting you in oncology. The elevator ride to his mother's floor felt like ascending into a new world. Nurses smiled as he passed. Dr. Matthews waited by the treatment room door. Michael. The doctor's face was bright with possibility. Ready to help your mom fight? Michael straightened his shoulders, touched Judge Thompson's card in his pocket, felt the weight of all those prayers and promises and new beginnings. Yes, so we're not alone anymore. The doctor opened the door. Inside, his mother waited, thin but smiling, hope lighting her tired eyes. Baby, she whispered, you look so handsome in that white shirt. Michael hugged her gently, carefully, pouring all his love into the embrace. Got some good news, Mom, he said. About a lot of things. Her hand found his. Tell me everything. So he did, there in the treatment room as nurses prepared the new medications. Told her about Mr. Washington's testimony, about Judge Thompson's intervention, about Mr. Klein's transformation, about the Foundation's help, about Grandma coming home. With each word, his mother's smile grew stronger. By the time he finished, tears streaked both their faces. You did all this? She asked. Michael shook his head. God did. I just told the truth. No, baby. She touched his cheek. God worked through you. Through your strength. Your faith. Your love. Dr. Matthews returned with the treatment card. Ready, Mrs. Johnson? She squeezed Michael's hand. Ready. My son's here now. As the new medicine began flowing, bringing hope with every drop, Michael watched his mother's face. Saw peace replacing pain. Saw future replacing fear. Outside the window, Chicago stretched endless under summer sky. Somewhere out there, his grandmother was packing to come home. Judge Thompson was moving mountains with phone calls. Mr. Klein was learning to see with new eyes. Ms. Reynolds was rewriting reports with happy endings. And here, in this quiet room, Michael Johnson, no longer accused, no longer afraid, held his mother's hand and felt the last pieces of his world shifting back into place. Not perfect, not easy, but right. The truth had been enough after all. The evening air felt different as Michael left the hospital. Warmer, lighter. The Foundation's car waited to take him to pick up his grandmother. Good news about your mom's first treatment, the driver said, pulling away from the curb. Judge Thompson called twice for updates. Michael smiled, remembering his mother's improved color by the end of the session. Dr. Matthews had used words like promising and optimistic, words they hadn't heard in months. Chicago General appeared ahead, where his grandmother waited. The nurse met him at the entrance with a wheelchair. Your grandmother's ready, she said. Blood pressure's stable. Heart rhythm's good. They found her sitting on the bed edge, already dressed in the clothes Michael had brought earlier. There's my boy. Her face glowed. How's your mama? Doctor says the new medicine's working already. Michael hugged her carefully. Ready to go home? Been ready. She patted his cheek. Help me with these papers? The discharge form seemed easier now, less overwhelming than before. As they finished the last signature, a familiar voice came from the doorway. Need a hand? Judge Thompson stood there, still in her court robes. Your Honor. Michael straightened. What are you doing here? Making sure everything's set. She entered the room. The Foundation's sending a home health aide tomorrow morning. Mrs. Johnson, they'll help with medications, cleaning, cooking, whatever you need. Michael's grandmother dabbed her eyes. Lord sent angels in Judge's robes. Also, Judge Thompson continued, I spoke with Michael's school principal. They're arranging a modified schedule, so he can be there for both of you while keeping up with his studies. The wheelchair procession moved through the hospital halls, Michael pushing, Judge Thompson walking alongside, sharing more arrangements she'd made. The Carter Foundation coordinator will call tomorrow about your daughter's treatment schedule. They're also providing transportation for both of you to medical appointments. Outside, the Chicago sunset painted the sky in gentle colors. A larger car than before waited at the curb. This one's yours, Judge Thompson said. Foundation's providing it for family use. Their driver will be available whenever you need. Michael helped his grandmother into the back seat, her movements already stronger than yesterday. Your Honor. His grandmother caught the judge's hand. Thank you for seeing truth in my boy. Truth sees itself, Judge Thompson replied softly. I just had to open my eyes. The drive home brought more surprises. Police cars flanked their apartment building, lights spinning quietly. Don't worry, the driver said, catching Michael's concerned look. Judge Thompson arranged protection. No reporters allowed, but there were other visitors. Mr. Klein stood at the building entrance, surrounded by grocery bags. Mr. Washington sat nearby, chatting with Ms. Reynolds. Even Michael's public defender waited, looking somewhat ashamed. Welcome home, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Klein called out. Brought some supplies. The bags contained fresh fruit, vegetables, bread, real food, not just cans. Starting that community outreach, he explained. You're first on the delivery list. Officers and neighbors helped carry everything upstairs. The apartment had changed. Clean windows let in the sunset light. Fresh paint covered the walls. Foundation sent cleaners, Ms. Reynolds explained. The health aide will help maintain everything. Michael's public defender stepped forward awkwardly. Michael, I'm sorry. I should have fought harder for you. It's okay, he said. Everything worked out right. Because of your strength, she replied. Not my help. I'm switching to full-time public defense now. No more side cases. Kids like you deserve better. As everyone helped settle his grandmother in her favorite chair, Michael noticed small changes throughout the apartment. New curtains, better lights, a proper medical organization system, signs of support finally reaching his family. His phone buzzed. The hospital. Michael. His mother's voice sounded stronger. Doctor says the first treatment went even better than expected. They're seeing changes already. That's great, Mom. He put the phone on speaker so his grandmother could hear. They're talking about reducing isolation protocols next week. Maybe I can come home sooner than we thought. Hope. Real hope in her voice. After the call, as neighbors and visitors began leaving, Judge Thompson lingered. Michael, she said, there's one more thing. She handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter from the Chicago Youth Leadership Program. They'd like you to speak next month. Share your story. Show other kids that truth and faith can change lives. Michael read the letter twice. You think I should? I think you already changed lives in that courtroom. Imagine how many more you could help. His grandmother's voice came soft and proud. Listen to the judge, baby. Your truth needs telling. Later that night, after his grandmother took her evening medicine and settled in a bed, Michael stood at his window. The police cars still waited below, lights quietly spinning, keeping watch. Mr. Klein's grocery bags filled their kitchen with fresh possibilities. The Foundation's car remained at the curb, ready for tomorrow's hospital visit. So many changes, so many helpers, so many prayers answered. His phone buzzed with a text from Judge Thompson. Get some rest. Big days ahead. Proud of you. Michael touched the letter in his pocket. The Youth Leadership Program. A chance to help other kids, to show them that truth matters. That faith works. That help comes if you hold on. His new white shirt hung clean in the closet. Not for court tomorrow, but for hope tomorrow. For life tomorrow. From his grandmother's room came the soft sound of her breathing. Steady now, peaceful. Down the hall, their neighbors played quiet music. Outside, Chicago's night lights sparkled like scattered prayers. Michael didn't need to pray alone tonight. His mother was getting stronger. His grandmother was home. Their family had support now. Their truth had been heard. He changed for bed, moving quietly through their transformed apartment. Pictures still hung on the walls, his mother healthy, his grandmother strong, himself younger. But they weren't just memories anymore. They were promises again. Sleep came easier now. No more tears in the dark. No more fear of tomorrow. And just before drifting off, Michael whispered one last prayer. Not asking this time, just thinking. For truth that broke through walls. For help that came at last. For family staying whole. For love winning out. For all the hearts unveiled, changed, and bound together by a young boy's unshaken faith and truth. Chicago's night wrapped gentle around their building. Police cars kept quiet watch. Tomorrow waited with medical appointments and school plans and healing paths. But tonight, in a small apartment made warm with hope, Michael Johnson slept peaceful at last. His truth had been enough. His faith had been enough. His love had been enough. And finally, blessedly, he could just be 13 again. Safe, supported, free, ready for whatever new horizons morning might bring.